Hello,
Hi, Mary.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm not sure how the sharing of the screen with the slides is going to go. Should we just practice real quick before everybody gets on here?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Okay. This is like the part that makes me the most nervous of any of it.
Should be okay.
So I guess you can see all of that, right?
Mm, yes.
How do you see your own notes though?
How do I?
No, I mean like with a presentation, how do you see your own notes like under the slide?
I don't know. Gary, do you know?
Well, that's where you would have your AI print them out for you and you would have paper.
Okay, well, I did print them out because I had a feeling this would happen. So I
Yeah,
thought maybe I could, be really slick and do it all on the screen, but
no, I
clearly not.
don't. Yeah, Zoom doesn't do that, I don't believe. What you can do is just, have another browser window open, maybe on a different display, and you can open your file again in speaker mode or notes mode.
Okay. Well,
Hmm.
well, now I just closed the whole thing. Let's open it back up.
Where'd she go? Oh, okay. You're still. Oh,
I'm
people are
still
waiting.
here. I'm just seeing if I can be super slick, but I really don't think so.
Yeah, all I see, like it says,
The other problem is if I do slideshow, then I can't see any of the chat.
Actually, I think the chat will break out as a separate window, and you can, especially if you have another display, you can move it. At least it does that on my system.
Okay, well,
does
Yeah,
it?
if you go in the upper right-hand corner of the chat window, there's a little arrow by the close X for the meeting chat. That'll actually move the chat into its own separate little mini window, and you can
oh,
move it
okay.
around.
Okay, let's try that.
I think it's somewhat operating system dependent how that breaks out.
Oh, no.
This,
All right, I've got the chat. It's a little floating window, but we're just going to get on with it. Maybe, Mary, you can kind of keep me up to date on what's in the chat if I can't. If I
and if you
can't.
have the floaty window, you can also stretch it into a bigger window.
Oh, sorry, everybody. This is definitely the part that
You're fine.
is nerve-wracking.
Does
Slideshow. Okay, here we go. The chat window is gone. So,
I will
And
let you know.
actually, I
Zoom
think I
does
can
that.
get
Yeah.
it here. Oh, maybe not. Oh, here it is. Okay, success. Okay, thank you everybody for your patience. Oh my goodness. So I wanted to give everyone the report to start, just in case you didn't get a copy. So this is the ungated report. You can just click on the link here and it'll take you straight to the report. And then if you are so inclined, I'd love for you to consider signing up for our newsletter. So I'm going to dive right in. My name is Emily Amos. I'm from Uplift Content. We are a content marketing agency, and we write a lot of case studies, customer stories, as well as other content like blog posts, white papers, and ebooks. So we wanted to do this report. This is the third year that we've done the report. And the initial reason for it was really the fact that we had a lot of questions, and the people that I was talking to also had lots of questions. And so I thought, okay, well, this is a perfect opportunity to do some original research and be able to pull some information from, across many people together into one place that kind of shows the trends around customer stories, as well as insights and things like that. And so I just want to say a big thank you, first of all, to anybody that shared the survey or completed the survey or shared the report. It really is, it means a lot. So today, what I was hoping we could cover is why we did the research, which I already told you, and then dive into the 5 takeaways from the report. And then the majority of the call, what I was hoping we could do is actually a discussion around the 3 biggest challenges that customer marketers are facing as it relates to customer stories. So the 3 topics for discussion would be finding customers to participate or willing to be named in customer stories. Number 2 would be how to identify impactful metrics. And then number 3, how to get approvals from customers. So just a little bit more background on the report. This year, we had 115 survey respondents, and they were all SaaS marketers responsible for customer stories. We did the survey in November, December of last year, and 80% of the respondents work for US-based companies. So we had 5 takeaways from the report. And the first takeaway is that customer stories continue to be effective. So for the 3rd year in a row, customer marketers ranked customer stories the #1 most effective marketing tactic to increase sales. And this is ahead of other tactics like general website content, SEO, blog posts, social media, and other things like that. I have a little slide that I want to show you. So these were the different things that we asked people to rank. So blog posts were down near the bottom. We've got ebooks, white papers, social media, paid ads, email, general website content, SEO, and then customer stories up here at the top. Next year, what I want to do is have survey respondents rank some of the different customer advocacy activities. I think that would also be very interesting to see. Please, anyone jump in at any time if you have any comments or questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep going. So takeaway number 2, customer stories have great ROI. So in the survey, we asked about 10 different customer advocacy activities. And of those 10 customer advocacy activities, marketers use customer stories the most. Customer stories also have the 2nd highest impact on revenue, according to our survey respondents. And customer stories also require a relatively small budget to execute. So some of the customer advocacy activities that we asked about were written stories. Sorry?
Jill has a question. Customer
Sure, yeah.
stories just on the website or included as part of another marketing tactic like an email campaign or a webinar?
In relation to what?
I'll take myself off mute. I was just, you had mentioned that customer stories are, number one for ROI, but like, was it just the fact that like a website, like the company website had customer stories, or was it when used with, an email campaign, or when used as part of an ebook, or, what was, I guess?
Got it. Great question. So the survey didn't get that granular. The question was probably something like, of these 10 activities, which activity provides the greatest ROI? My assumption, I know it's very dangerous to make assumptions, but my assumption would be that it would include not just the customer story page on the website, but also as used in email nurture sequences and ebooks and things like that. Does that answer your question, Jill?
It does. Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to quickly let you know what the 10 activities were that we asked about, just for your own reference. So we asked about written stories, video stories, speaking events, reference calls, testimonials, both written and video, as well as peer reviews, cabs, referrals, and social media. So here's one representation of this information. So which customer activity has the smallest budget and the biggest impact on revenue? So up at the top, we've got smallest spend. And over here on the right, we've got biggest impact on revenue. So kind of up here is, kind of the ideal. So reference calls with prospects would be kind of ranked the top for smallest spend, biggest impact on revenue. Referrals also do well in terms of smallest spend and more of an average impact on revenue. Written customer stories are a bit on the higher side, but still fairly average around spend, but has like a decent impact on revenue. And then we've got video stories as well as speaking events that are a bigger spend, but they do pay off in that they have a bigger impact on revenue. And then
I guess, sorry, one more question.
Yeah, sure, Jill.
Video, what was the definition, I guess, of video testimonials, and what was the definition of video customer stories, and same for written testimonials and customer stories?
Another excellent question. We didn't provide definitions in the survey, so people would have made their own determination there.
Okay.
So just quickly kind of on, the smallest impact on revenue, we've got social media over here, written testimonials, peer reviews, cabs, and video testimonials, all in various areas on the scale. Any questions before I move on to takeaway number 3? All right, so takeaway number 3, customer stories do continue to be a growing priority. So in 2023, the software companies that responded to the survey had 50 active customer stories in use. The year before that, they had 38, and the year before that, they had 28. So over that 3-year period, it shows a 79% increase in the number of active customer stories. And then looking forward to this year, to 2024, companies plan to produce 19 new stories this year compared to the 14 that they actually produced last year. And I'll show you a bit of a breakdown on this next slide here. So those numbers that I spoke about are here, where we did an average of all companies. We also broke it down into smaller companies versus larger SaaS companies. So for smaller companies, you can see that the planned number of stories is 13 versus for a larger company of 500 or more employees, the planned number of stories is 24. So that's interesting to see. Takeaway number 4, the types of stories that we're telling is changing. This has been something that I've really been interested in and have been keeping my eye on. So on the next slide, you'll see the different types of stories that we provided people with in order to choose which ones they tell the most of. So the classic challenge solution results stories, 82% of marketers who responded to the survey tell these kinds of stories. And then what was interesting for me to see was that use case stories actually took the lead this year by a smidge, coming in at 83% of marketers telling this type of story. So that was kind of cool to see. Here are the different kinds of stories that we provided as an option for people to select. So we had use case stories, which came in at the highest percentage. And then we have the more traditional challenge solution results. We have the best practices or advice style story. We have an adoption story, switcher stories, and implementation stories.
That starts at 8. We're not missing this one. That starts at 8. We're not missing this one.
Thank you.
Emily, Susan would like to ask, would it be possible to get a copy of the presentation? Some great takeaways. My question on that is, Susan, are you thinking for sharing internally? Yes. Okay.
I'm happy to. And
Okay.
the report, which I think is, if you go scroll to the very top of the chat, if you click on the report link, all of these will be in there as well, but they're not formatted in a top takeaway format, so you would have to dig around a little bit, but I'm certainly happy to share the presentation as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so last takeaway is AI. We had to talk about AI. So AI certainly is playing a role in customer stories. So over a third of the survey respondents use AI in at least one step of the customer story production process. The majority use it for organizational tasks and administrative tasks. And 75% of the respondents said that the biggest concern that they have with AI is its lack of nuance in telling a human story. So that was interesting to see. Here is the breakdown in terms of AI. So the question was, what steps in the customer story production process do SaaS companies use or want to try AI tools for? So we did combine current status as well as future aspirations together. So we've got organizational and administrative tasks coming in at 57% of folks using AI for this. And then the more creative storytelling's portion comes in at 30%. Editing and formatting comes in at 27%. Any questions before I move on to the next section?
I'd love to hear what you think about using AI for the customer story process, but we could touch on that later if you'd like.
I do think, let's just start the discussion, because I do think this is not one of the top challenges that was identified by the respondents, but I do think that it's something that everyone's interested in. So why don't we just kick off the discussion now about AI? So I guess from my perspective, I have been experimenting. I think that AI can be used fairly well for a simple blog post that has an SEO focus. I'm not sold yet that it's quite ready to handle interviews and transcripts and telling that story. This is my own personal experience and my personal opinion. I don't know if Lauren's on the call. I know Lauren has done a lot of this, and she has used AI quite a bit to produce customer stories that she's happy with. And at Customer XCon in October, certainly I chatted to other people who felt that it produced something decent, like decent enough to get up on their website, for example. But I'd love to hear everyone else. Does anyone have any experience to share?
Lauren and Mary helped me yesterday do a recording of a basic interview for a fictional software. And I am getting ready to test it out and see if I can use AI to create a short form case study, long form case study, social media posts, and clips of the video. So we will see. I just
Yeah,
got
I saw
started on
that,
it.
Christine. I'm really curious. So I hope you do kind
Yeah,
of let us
I'm
all
just getting
know.
ready to go, to get started, try to pull it apart and work with it today and tomorrow. So I should have more next week, maybe the week after.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if any of you know Tom Winter. He has a company called SEO Wind, which is an AI tool. He just did a really fun little test on LinkedIn where he created a small task and he got an experienced freelancer to do it. He got a lower quality agency to do it, and then he got his AI tool to do it. And he put the 3 different paragraphs in a LinkedIn post, and then got everyone to weigh in on who wrote what. And one of them was by far and away the best quality. And I actually think it was probably AI that did the best one. We're just he's teasing us all and making us wait to hear what the results are, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be AI for the win. Anybody else have any experience with AI and customer stories? Casey, have you done any experimentation?
None. Hi, I was trying to unmute myself. You got it. Yeah, thank you for asking. I like AI for taking interview transcripts and like summarizing. I'll say, would you summarize the challenges for me? Summarize the outcomes for me, that kind of thing, to sort of save time on the front end of just organizing a lot of information.
I love that.
Yeah, and then from there, build it out with all the thoughtful quotes and all that. Or sometimes I'll say, would you find the best quotes in this transcript where the person talks about this or that? And so it definitely, saves some time, but doesn't do a very good job with the nuances of, what the company wants to bring out in terms of key messaging and all that. So that's my experience.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you agree with the quotes that they chose being the most impactful quotes, for example? Do you agree with the summarization of the challenges, for example?
I usually agree with like the bulleted stuff, like pull out the challenges or pull out the results or outcomes. But the quotes, you have to be really careful because I find, and maybe others find this too, or other tools are better, but it will give me quotes that are not direct quotes. It'll sometimes change the quotes a little bit. And so I'll go back and be like, wait a minute, that wasn't exactly right. So, which is odd. So I have to like say, would you, tell me the quotes without changing them, make sure it's a direct quote or whatever. I have to be super specific with it.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had that
Have you
as
seen
well.
that too?
Casey, and one of the things I do is when I say give me a quote or I ask for a quote, I say give me the timestamp as well, so I can easily go back and
Ooh,
find it. Um,
that's a
Oh,
great tip, Mary.
that's good.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't absolutely love everything that AI has done as far as putting together some content. And I'm not trying to do a customer story, but I try to run some content ideas through like after these calls. And it doesn't always give me the greatest quotes. I feel like going through and scanning the transcript and making highlights is better. But like you were saying, Casey, the kind of getting a summarization or, what are some action steps or pain points or things like that that came up in the call, those are helpful. So, asking it for the pain points for that customer story, that would be useful.
Definitely, definitely. And are you guys using ChatGPT or something else?
I'm using ChatGPT.
Me too.
Okay, yeah, I just started experimenting with Perplexity and yeah, so but can't really report back on that yet.
Well, let us know because I think we're all trying to find the best possible tool, but I guess it changes every 5 seconds, which makes it a bit tricky too.
I do like Claude AI a
Yeah.
lot. Sometimes I mean, it tends to generate more in my tone of voice out of the gate. And the tools that Jasper has built into theirs are pretty darn good.
Okay, that's good to know. Anybody else? I'd love to hear experiences with AI. Jill or Gary, Heather, Stephanie,
I'm using
Susan.
Gemini, which is the Google Bard version 2. And I find it to be much smarter than ChatGPT, but I also only have access to the free version. I'm not using a paid version. So I know that there's a variety of experiences that you have there.
Is the paid version smarter?
You can train it onto what you want. So you can feed it all the information that's relevant to you.
Right.
But I think that there is definitely, because we have some people on our team doing it, and there's a skill level that goes along with like how to train the model too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm using Grammarly Go, but that's because that's what was approved by our company. So it's okay. I mean, unfortunately, at work, I'm blocked from a lot of other different versions, like, ChatGPT. So I'd have to like use my phone and it's kind of complicated. So for now, I'm just stuck with Grammarly Go.
And how are you using it, Jill, in your day-to-day?
Um, I've been using it to come up with a lot of email subject lines. I work on our podcast, so I have been taking some blog posts and trying to see if I can create podcast scripts out of that. It's not the best, but it's better than staring at a blank sheet of paper. So a lot of times just kind of taking existing content, typing in different actions, and so sometimes it'll give me like a Q&A format, but it's kind of boring. Or I'll say just write a whole podcast script and it'll just write it in like one person versus a narrative. So but at least I'm kind of able to take both of them and then be like, okay, these are decent questions, could use better answers. These are better answers but need better questions.
So definitely a starting point, gets the juices flowing, something to react to.
Exactly.
Yeah, awesome.
And Allison Hughes just shared in chat, it was a while ago, but we used for a case study experiment and wrote a blog on it. And she posted that in the chat room.
Awesome. There's so many good things in here, but I'm nervous that if I click on it, it'll mess up the presentation screen. So maybe can somebody capture all these awesome links and send them to me afterwards?
Sure, I can do that.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Anybody
Allison,
else?
would you say that you liked the way it turned out? Let's see if she answers. Yes, it was just.
Sorry, I can unmute myself. I forgot to do that. But yeah, it was just, I didn't do it. Our CEO did it just as a fun experiment because he likes playing around with the chat GPT. So he did that experiment, but the actual, you can read the actual interview I did with the gal. Her name's Colette from Databricks. And the interview is on our advocates page on our website. And then you'll see the blog was just kind of taking the bare bones. It didn't have anything, what we did with that blog had nothing to do with the interview. I did that separately. We then just played around with the actual interview in its raw form is what that was. So.
Gotcha.
Okay. Anybody else experiment with AI for creating customer stories? Who wants to share? Going once, going twice. All right, let's move on then. So as I mentioned, we have about 30 minutes left. So let's aim to do about 10 minutes per challenge. So the first challenge, and this is the challenge that got ranked as the biggest challenge by the survey respondents. So the biggest challenge was finding customers to participate in customer stories or be willing to be named in customer stories. So, oops, what am I doing here? Let's kick it off with kind of identifying why it's a challenge, and then if we can share a few ways of overcoming the challenge, so identifying customers for customer stories, that would be great. Who would like to start? Who experiences this as a challenge for themselves?
I can jump in. So, hi everybody. I'm Heather Timney. I am my official title is Customer Communications Manager, but really focusing on customer advocacy for a cybersecurity company. And so, yes, this definitely falls into my bucket of one of my biggest challenges is I'm somewhat new to the organization. So just sort of rolling out who I am, who to go to. They didn't really have a point of contact prior to me coming on. And so just working with our sales team and figuring out, or just letting know I'm a resource for them. And hey, reminding them customer stories, we know they're really important to you, important to the sales process, but we need your support to help nominate those. You are talking with the account owners, are talking with the customer. They understand their challenges. They know the relationship. They know if they would be a good fit. They know the health of the customer and where they stand. And so that's been, a challenge for me, is just figuring out or working on ways to fill out my pipeline. And so how I'm working to identify customers for the stories is, for example, I just did an enablement session with our sales org, and it was talking about nominating customers across the board for stories or for peer-to-peer references, but making it an easy process for them for those nominations, right? So we're using Reference Edge right now. We've just rolled it out to the team. We're going to see how successful it is, but working with them to identify those customer contacts who they think, or those customer champions really, who would be a great fit for that. And then I'm working with our MOPS team because they sort of own the platform, but we are introducing an incentive program to get them to start those nominations. And then really just like talking to them of where the value is, right? And how customer stories, relevant customer stories, customer use cases, how that's going to influence or impact their sales process. And then also just reminding them that customers care about this too. They want to build a personal brand. They want to be able to share their successes internally with maybe their leadership or their peers and their network. So just reminding them that that's important, and that's how we're working on it. But yeah, I think mine is just trying to figure out how to fill that pipeline. Sometimes it's a lot of like one-to-one communication, just looking at different places that maybe somebody has self-nominated themselves, like a user evidence survey. Is a customer self-nominated to be a story? did I get a lead from, the PMM team? And so just kind of like working down those rabbit holes. And if somebody gives me a no, I say, well, maybe you could think of somebody else. What other customer do you have? And then I created like this menu of service to break down the barrier in terms of this is what it looks like. So I give them the information ahead of time to say, like, it doesn't have to be like a really tough experience or a long process. We can work together on this. So long answer, but I'm in this bucket for sure.
I don't know if you saw me, Heather, but like I
Yeah.
felt like a bobblehead
Oh, I
the
should have
whole
started
time you
my
were
video.
talking.
I'm so sorry. I should have started my video. Totally forgot.
I agree with everything you've been saying so much. A couple of quick questions. I'd love to hear your impression of what the hang up or why are the sales folks to me, it's so obvious. There's so many benefits to nominating and having customers identified and having great stories and references, et cetera, et cetera. But there must be something holding the sales folks back. What is that? What is it, in your opinion?
I think, well, it's the time. I think some cases they don't want to maybe necessarily invest the time in going down that path of like trying to figure out who would be a good fit. And it's just not top of mind, right? Like we just completed our last fiscal year. We've just launched into a new fiscal year. They've been super busy, right? The last couple of months since I've joined. I think previously too, they didn't know who to go to. In my particular circumstance, they didn't know what resource to go to. They didn't know who they could raise their hand to or how to do the nomination process. There wasn't like a main point of contact internally within our organization. And so I think that's part of the challenge is they didn't know where to go. But my goal, my hope is that now that they're aware that I'm here, I keep knocking on doors. Sometimes it's the one-to-one conversation or the one-to-many conversation and just providing as many resources for them as possible so they understand what the process looks like from the internal perspective of us and what we're asking the sales or account owners to do, and then what the customer will be expected to do. So like two pieces of enablement material, educational material, so they understand what the process looks like.
And do you think that any of it has to do with the fact that the sales folks are probably commission based, at least partially commission based, and so they're not making money from this time spent?
Yeah, I mean, probably, right? Like there's a lot of competing priorities and I think sometimes it's just like out of sight and just reminding them, hey, we need your support to fill the pipeline.
Yeah.
And so, but it is self-discovery on my end too. And it's looking at other ways to fill the pipeline and saying like, okay, like I mentioned, user evidence. If somebody's self-nominated from a different survey that we've done, or I've seen, a peer review come through that wasn't anonymous, I can lean into that as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned incentives. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we are rolling out Reference Edge. We adopted it, or the company adopted it last year, but it had a slow rollout, not a lot of adoption. We experienced a lot of challenges with the tool. And so when I joined and I had a colleague in MOPS join at the same time, we were sort of tasked of breathing new life into this and rolling it back out and getting that adoption. And so what we decided to do was do an incentive program in Q1 and in Q2 where by nominating customers to join our advocacy program for stories or for peer-to-peer references, they're going to earn points. And the top 3 winners for each quarter will receive an incentive, a gift card incentive. And we made it, the MOPS team had a good budget for it. So I like, it's like $700 for first place. So we, not small change, right? Like
Yeah.
the idea was that we could extend this for 2 quarters. It would be a great opportunity for us to build that pipeline with a relatively small like investment in the front end, but just keep it going and then making it exciting and, Slack posts and leaderboards and, all of those things and just make it really, really impactful. And we started with the enablement session and we'll have office hours and all of those activities.
Cool. I like that because I mean, I would assume they're competitive by nature. So
yeah.
It sounds like you're tapping into your psychology there.
Yeah.
Tiffany, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Hello, Emily and everyone. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
So just kind of, yeah, echoing a lot of what Heather said. And what I do is when I was using Influitive at the startup that I was at, that I implemented, and I was there for 6.5 years, I launched another community for employees. So employees can sign up, and they were in a separate hub. So we had customer advocates as one and employees as the other. And I would curate challenges to get people to share on social and like certain things. So that's another way that I kind of tracked and kind of help incentivize, employees to share and get on social and help nominate. And I try to make it fun. And then when I do launch, we do like, I send it to all company, right? So, and I kind of acknowledge and validate whether it's the CSM that bubbled it up or the rep, or even if they didn't bubble it up, I still give them credit for like, making sure that the account is happy and so forth, right? So acknowledging them, and then people start wanting to be like, hey, I want recognition that I, maintained or help the account stay at like a higher NPS, like a 9 or a 10, which is a promoter. So that's another way that I kind of was able to kind of promote and try to get people to bubble up and make it a little bit fun and competitive as well. I'm not sure, like, with the state of Influitive, what is all happening? Has anything changed? I mean, I've tried to follow as much as I can, but there's a lot of different things going on. So, yeah, that's kind of another way that I leverage Influitive to kind of help keep it fun, make it competitive, and get people to kind of help, whether it's salespeople or CSM. All employees can join and participate in all the challenges and get points for swag. They love swag, so I give them swag and gift cards and so forth.
Love that. Thank you, Tiffany. Let's get one more person to chime in, and then we'll move on to the next challenge. Anybody want to tell us about how they identify customers?
I built it into the community gamification. So as they were references, customer of the month, or case study participants, they got points toward swag and the product advisory board, which is where everyone wanted. They wanted to sit in with product and be face to face with the product team. So, but that was G2 references, and everything was all built into that.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, great. I am going to share a link in the chat. So we just recently published a resource with 41 ideas for how to identify customers. Mary was a huge help. Some of her tips are in there, as well as tips from Amanda Peacock and Jeannie Nitschke and Jacqueline Gu. I think that's it. So I would encourage you to take a peek at that if you want some more ideas. So the next challenge that we have to chat about, so this was the second highest ranking challenge for folks who filled out the survey, identifying impactful metrics. So let's chat about why this is challenging and how you go about identifying metrics that are share worthy. Who would like to start?
Are you asking what is identifying the impactful metrics from the point of having a case study and sharing that internally, or in the actual customer story?
That's a great question. Again, the survey didn't have that level of nuance, so people would have answered it however it resonated with them. In my mind, it was, I guess it was twofold. It was how to determine whether the story was worth telling because it has metrics that are impactful enough. And then within the story, as you're doing the interview and putting the story together, how do you figure out what kind of metrics will be impactful?
Okay, that works.
Who would like to chat about metrics? I know it's something that, it does come up a lot. Anybody? Oh, Tiffany, yes.
Hi. So when I did this, I would send the actual like interview questionnaire to the client and stating that 1 or 2 metric is required for a case study to be published. So they're aware of it ahead of time. And then what I do is I schedule the video call and then we kind of talk through it for 45 minutes or an hour. And that's the biggest heavy lifting part for the customer. And I kind of let them know that once they do the interview, pretty much everything else is on us to draft the copy, proofread everything, get it to them to make any edits and to blast before we publish it. But I tell them that up front. So then when it comes to time, if we can't publish it because there aren't any metrics, because that's a requirement. So I said, this is a requirement that we have to have. And then I try to make it easy. I identify metrics that obviously is something that is important to the client, right? Whatever business they're in, whether they're in professional services, our software is obviously, project management. So we talk a lot about utilization, minimizing admin time, which, and how that equates to money, right? The less people we have on the bench, the less best bench warmers we have, the more we can bill, right? We want our employees to be billable at least, 80%. And 20% non-billable, like admin internal things. So I try to find metrics that the client that is important to their business, and then whatever is important to our business as well, like our software. And then I generally try to get that on the call, because once you get off the call, it's going to be very hard for them to kind of go back in a week and think about, oh my gosh. So what I do is I kind of serve it up as I'm doing the interview. They mention something, I kind of serve it up and try to make it like a percentage or something that's palatable for them, and saying, well, if you're saying this, so that would be a reduction and an increase in utilization of 5%, which means about $50,000 or what have you. And then if they feel like, oh yeah, that sounds good, or they're comfortable with that, that's kind of how I get them to, confirm or say okay to a metric that they might not say when they get off the call, because they're too busy and they're not going to have time to think, what is it that she needs, right? So you want to make it as easy and as painless as possible during the call. And so when I'm doing the interview, my writer is pounding away and we have obviously the video call, I kind of serve up metrics that's easy for them to just approve. So then we don't have to get it after the fact, because once that happens, generally it's very hard to get anything from them after they get off the call.
Again, I'm the bobblehead. Yes. So Tiffany, wow, you can do that kind of math on the fly?
Yes, I mean you have to, right? I mean, I'm constantly, when I'm interviewing, I'm thinking about how I can make this or word it in a way that is easy for them, and it's agreeable and not completely off base, right? And then I even offer to run reports for them if they really need, because we don't really want to give certain numbers that that leaves them open, but something that's easy is like, oh yeah, they've reduced admin time by 20%, which means their executive assistant that they pay maybe 100 grand a year is now doing less admin work and increasing production or productivity of whatever amount of money. So I turn it generally into percentages or dollar values of some sort to make it compelling in the story. And then of course, once we draft up the story, we include that and they see everything that's there, and I've never had anybody really say that this metric doesn't work, right? So for me, that's been my experience. So you kind of have to think quickly as you're on the call and you're doing the interview, right? Kind of put it together in a way that's easy for them to kind of agree to as well.
I am so impressed, because every time I try and figure out a percentage increase or percentage decrease, I have to go to Google, remind me what the formula is. So I could definitely not do it on the fly during an interview, but that's amazing. I see a question from Heather. Something that's been raised on her team is how they should prioritize updating existing customer stories. Curious how folks address this. At this time, I've been focused on net new stories. Great question. How are all of you, are you updating stories? When do you do it and how do you do it? Anybody want to share? Susan or Jim?
Well, actually, Emily, while we're waiting, I'll if anybody has any feedback to share there, I'd love it. But
Yeah.
to Tiffany's point, when it comes to identifying the metrics, so I'm just working on a customer story right now, and I actually was trying out a new format where our PMM team was conducting the customer story interview to see, you know, as a goal to get them more closely aligned with customers, understanding their stories. But you know, we didn't get the necessary metrics that we needed. So we've decided that, hey, we need to figure out a way to pull in our BVA team, so our business value office, to help that. And so we just had the second call with the customer, and the way he approached it was exactly how Tiffany, you know, was mentioning and how she handles it. And it's, you know, just kind of working with the customer together. So would you say it's this, and would you say it's that? And what other customers have experienced is this type of, you know, metric or whatever. So what she's saying, I think, is great. I wish I would have gotten it ahead of time so I could just cut out one more step in the process.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, being very prepared about, as the interviewer, what kind of metrics do you want? And being very specific, because I think, you know, if you just come in with a broad question of like, do you have any metrics to share? Like you're not going to get the kind of detail that you're hoping for. I also would love to hear how people feel about the debate about sending some of those questions ahead of time. My feeling is that nobody knows metrics off the top of their head. So if we can allow them to prep a little before the interview, it allows them to really feel confident and be the hero as they're doing the interview with you. If they can come to the table with numbers, and to Tiffany's point as well, you're not going to get them afterwards. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that. Allison, Mary, Casey.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick. I definitely think it helps to send the questions ahead of time so that they know. Or if you don't want to send the full question list, you know, sometimes I'll say, we're really looking to get metrics in, you know, these 3 to 5 areas or whatever, just so that they have a heads up on that, because you're right, they usually cannot pull them up on the fly. So giving them some sort of heads up is really, really helpful. I've had the risk of sending the questions ahead of time. I've had customers like shoot them back to me. Oh, I filled out all your questions. So do we need the interview now? I don't know if anybody else has had that happen. So I always have to like preface it, you know, this is just a heads up. Don't fill it out. We'll go over things on the call so we can, you know, have a conversation. So anyway, but it does really help.
Yeah, for sure.
I've never had anybody, sorry, it's Tiffany again. I've never had anybody fill it out. I think it's people that think that they're going to fill it out. It's like brain surgery. It's hard because they don't remember a year ago or 2 years ago what happened during implementation and where they were at, right? So when you prep for the call, of course, do your due diligence on the client, their business, how they've, you know, how long they've been with you, what kind of pain points, you know, your software platform solves for them. And that really helps because as you talk through it, they start remembering things, right? When people look at all the questionnaires, sometimes it's intimidating as well, right? They're thinking it's a lot. Mine isn't that long. I think I might have like 50 questions, and then I'll ask, like, you know, I'll put like a metrics area of metrics that are important to you, utilization, resources, you know, XYZ that's important for project management and for how they run their business. So just so they have an idea. And then of course there's that, you know, we need 1 or 2 metrics for the case study to be published, so they don't get upset if they don't give me one and I can't publish it, right? So generally I always can get something, and helping to serve it up in a certain way that's easy for them to approve definitely makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody
Question
else?
on Heather's question on prioritizing, updating case studies. Are you updating them? Meaning, is it a creative update? Is it a change on metrics, or why are you updating this? And I get that, yeah, of course, new customer stories are definitely, I think, you know, is one of the priorities for every company that I work for as well.
In our case, I think it's about the content, right? The metrics aren't as strong as the team thinks they could be, you know, because there wasn't person in my role who's sort of leading that and asking maybe the right questions or getting to like what we were truly trying to uncover as part of this story. So
Oh,
it's like, hey, this story, it's just really light on content, or it doesn't have like really any strong metrics. Is there a way that, should we be updating this story? And that's my challenge, is just trying to balance and prioritize. Do we go back and update these stories? If it's a strong brand, like I could make a good consideration for it. If the use case is really strong, let's add it back to the pipeline and see what we can do. And then working with our BVA office and finding out, did you complete a BVA with them, right? Do we have any of those metrics that we can, put back into that?
right. I think that's a good way to prioritize it, right? Based on um, pain points, right? If you can get a strong metric, and of course, based on how large the brand is, I think that's a good way to kind of prioritize it. And sometimes customers aren't even customers anymore, right? So now that I just said that, do people remove case studies if they're no longer customers right away, or how do you kind of look at that? Because sometimes, the information can be relevant. I mean, they were a customer, even though they're not a customer now. You wouldn't get them to be on a reference call, but the story, I think, is still, I think, valid, because every use case and every customer kind of have a special use case, right, for our software. So I'm curious how other people handle this.
Any thoughts, folks?
We had a situation happen recently where a customer churned, and we removed the case study altogether at this point. But I like the suggestion here by Susan to possibly anonymize the story instead. That's a good suggestion.
I think it depends. This is Mary, by the way. I think it depends. Like if you have a customer that's unhappy and they turned, then you would probably want to remove it. But if it's a customer that you've had and they've turned only because they had like an RIF and now they have no one to run the program or something, I'd probably still leave it based on the relationship with that customer overall or that account overall. Um, I think it depends.
I agree. I would remove it, off the website. But if there's a customer that needs something, we can kind of caveat this as, oh, this exactly relates to your use case. Take a look. And you can mention that they're no longer a customer if you want. But if the use case is strong and someone can use it or leverage it for a prospect, I think it's still important to continue to use them and just tell people.
One last thing, Heather, something that popped to mind for me about updating customer stories would be, if your relationship continues to be a good one and, the metrics do get stronger, there is a really good rationale for updating them. There's always the debate, well, when should we do this story? Is it too soon to do the story? Should we wait? So, maybe do the story and then know that in a year you're going to circle back and try and get some updated metrics. I think that that's a great way to approach it. And I think also, there's the possibility that you can add in the fact that the account has grown, that they've added new products and features and use cases. That's kind of a cool addition as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think and there's another challenge on top of this, right? Is the budget and resource allocation and new stories versus existing stories, and just trying to figure out, where we want to direct those resources.
I think honestly, new stories are the easiest. We've had numerous customers kind of come to us and say, we're thinking of updating some stories, but we also have some new ones that we want your help with. And the new ones are much easier to kind of get out the door and completed and approved. The updating tasks just seem to fizzle every time. in my experience. Okay,
That's
we're
a
at
good point.
time.
We are, yes. Thank you so much for joining us, Emily. Thank you for sharing, Heather and Tiffany and Christine, who's already off the call, and everyone else. And you can check out Emily's reports. I'll share all the information in an email. And yeah, I forgot to mention our sponsors, Champion. So go ahead and check out their new features this week. And I'll see everyone next week. Thank you again, Emily.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your great questions and your participation. It was fun. Bye,
Great.
everybody.
Thanks, Emily. Thanks, Mary.
Bye. Yes, you too.
Bye.
Bye.